Yay, Ryan. Ryan is one of my most favorite people in the world. I love him so much. From the moment I heard his voice, actually, it was your voice immediately. I heard your voice before I saw you when we were in our coach training together. And I remember going, oh, who's that? Who is that? Your silky smooth voice. Love you so much. We're so excited to have you here, and I just really want to start diving in with you. So, we would love it if you would introduce yourself in the way that you would like to be introduced to the world.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that intro too. Love you too. Yeah, for me, so I'm Ryan Spence. I'm a life wellness business coach based out of downtown Minneapolis. I'm very passionate about personal development. I think from the age of 4, that's when my healing journey began with challenges that I've had growing up and challenges with my mom and um, yeah, growing up, a lot of I always think about we all have our wounds and our path in our lifetime, and mine's definitely been around connection with others, and especially with women. So that's why it's so nourishing to be around the three of you, just like receiving just your wonderful gentle eyes and your smiles and all the love that you have is so something I'm very grateful for, because it's not something I felt a lot in my life actually. And so a lot of my life has been navigating my connection, especially with women, and for anybody that's familiar with attachment style, anxious attachment style, which I've resonated with in the past. And yeah, that's led me into this personal journey of being this person that like always wants to improve, wants to make my life better. And that's what ultimately propelled me to become a coach. Was I'm very much a catalyst for change. That's what I did in my corporate career for 18 years, was changing things, improving things, measuring things, being the data geek, the finance guy, saving money, saving time. And that's definitely one of my passions. And that's what I do in my coaching business. And I also do process consulting as well. So that's probably my overall theme is, change maker, making stuff happen. We'll put in the PG terms there, but yeah, I'm here to initiate things, and that goes along with my human design. I'm a human design manifester for anybody that knows human design, and that's why I think my voice might have attracted you, Eleanor, as well. So that's one of the qualities of a manifester. Um, yeah. Yeah, I think there's so much more I could go into, but I want to throw it back over to you guys. What else do you want to know about me?
Good question.
Yeah, there's so much.
Open to interrogation.
Perfect.
I'm interested to hear more, if you're willing to share, about your journey with women and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for my journey with women, a lot of it growing up. I was also very overweight from a young age too. And so a lot of, having a challenging relationship with my mom, who had her own mental health issues, and being a single mom and all those things. There was a lot of resentment and bitterness and frustration of thinking, oh, I deserve more, and projecting that anger onto her until finally finding that forgiveness the last couple of years. But how that really showed up for me was just constantly, seeking out validation and approval from women, and yeah, really one thinking that there's going to be this sense of, okay, well, if this attractive woman that I admire likes me, then I'll be whole, that type of thing. Like kind of needing, in my eyes, thinking that I need this other person to make me whole. And so it really showed up that way a lot, and till really just even the last couple of years, and it's still a shadow that I'm still navigating, but I'm so much more aware of it. So the painful side of the shadow isn't nearly as painful, and I'm much more aware of what I need. And now that I'm finding a lot more wholeness, then there's a lot less need or perceived need for that. as well. And a lot of that has also been with a lot of the work I've especially done in the last couple of years with going to some shamanic retreats where I've released a lot of grief from childhood, and that's helped me be in a much more grounded, centered place as a man, and being a little less anxious, a little bit more calm around a woman, which, at least in the traditional type of relation of man woman, what I've been learning is a woman really appreciates that groundedness and centeredness to hold space for the woman, at least as I'm learning. And so I'm finally, especially doing some active practice of that the last couple months, expressing my desires, honoring their no's, honoring their boundaries, voicing my boundaries, because my boundaries are often pushed, and having a lot less attachment. It's just so much more aligned and peaceful place to be than the first 37-ish years of my life, being anxious and not being able to trust women to, one, be honest with me, to communicate, open and honest with me. And I think also just know that I am lovable and I give myself enough love, and I don't necessarily need that from somebody else. It's nice to have, but it's, being self-empowered. I don't really like to rely on too many other people anyway. So it's great to have this full tank of self-love that I've just developed the last couple of years, especially.
Thank you for sharing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have so many questions coming up. I guess one question is like, when was the first time do you have an outstanding memory from childhood that you feel like helped you in your adult life, or maybe came through in some of the shamanic healing that has like illuminated this need to find that self-love and to identify kind of even the path that you needed to take in order to come to this place of pretty deep healing? I think it's pretty profound, and a lot of people are looking for that kind of healing in their lives. So it's interesting to dive into like, what were the first steps, and are there any significant memories there?
Yeah, it's such a long journey. I think there's so many little steps. I think what kind of comes to me right now is just, actually, when I was at the shamanic retreat last summer, it really took me back to maybe that first step around the age of 4 to 6. Just, my parents got divorced, and I have a really great relationship with my dad. He's a great dad. My mom's great too, but there was just the emotional challenge and not getting what I wanted emotionally. So I can't know if I think of like a specific memory, but I just know around the age of 4 to 6, I was really kind of like, there was this weird pulling away from my mom, like kind of losing trust and respect in her, but also like, still wanting that thing from her. So there's a lot of weird dissonance there. I think really, as I perceived rejection from women, middle school and high school, being interested in women, being way too anxious and nervous to ask them out. I was perceived because I was overweight, and thinking that, I even had a few people, I got bullied a little bit too growing up, especially in elementary school. I think for being overweight. And so thinking that I was ugly and overweight was the reason why these girls were putting me in the friend zone or weren't interested in such. And then even a little bit through college. So kind of one of the first big major steps is I lost all that weight. I lost 130 pounds. So I'm 38 now. I lost it between the ages of 22, 26. And my thought is, okay, now I'm lovable, right? I got rid of this weight loss. It was a little, a part of the motivation to lose the weight. But I think, to answer your question, kind of the next step, around my mid to late 20s, is thinking, I'm in good shape. I'm healthier. I should be lovable now. And then that was when online or website dating like Match.com and all those other sites were really becoming popular. And I'm introverted. I'm more of a nerd. I was too shy to talk to women in person, so that was great. And then I became like, I'd say, arcade style or a serial dater of like, okay, going on dates, trying to seek out that love. And that really took place from probably the age of 26 to like early 30s. There was a lot of that. I had a relationship that just, went okay. It was, a 2-year relationship, but it was tough because I had to break up with her. And so that became almost maybe a little bit avoidant, and made me only like want to go on dates with women if I'm like on the first date, I'm like, oh yeah, she's the one, like thinking that there's this like this reassurance that I don't want to go through another long relationship, that the last 6 months is really miserable unless I'm for sure. So I kind of become a little avoidant in that front. That's really a lot of my 30s. And then kind of one of the other big moments was um, early summer 2019, I believe. I was talking to somebody, and it was a long distance thing, and I was just overly enamored with her for kind of all the wrong reasons. And I would say that she cheated on me, but in all essence, we weren't really that serious. But in my mind, we were more serious than what we really were, and that brought me into my dark night of the soul. Where later that week, I just my body was like feeling really lightheaded. I was just feeling ill. I hadn't processed the emotions really from earlier this week. I just like typical, just uh, didn't know really how to process my emotions. And later that week, I cried. I think it was either an hour and a half or 2.5 hours of just ugly crying, like crying out, like just snot bubbles and all the fluids coming out the face. And for I think about an hour and a half or 2.5 hours. And it was just this really weird experience of like crying about that woman, but then it just subconsciously, I was crying about my mom and all these other experiences that just kept coming up. And it was scary because there was so much emotion coming out. I actually had my only ever panic attack, and I thought it was a heart attack. So I called 911, and they're like, no, you just had a panic attack. And I felt still a lot of trauma. Like anytime I saw that woman, like any kind of interaction, I just saw somebody with the same name as her, I just felt a trauma. And so that later on led me to, I'm like, I need to do something different. And a lot of that was doing a lot of research on YouTube. I found a relationship coach that taught me the concept of self-love. And, she was like a law of attraction coach. And YouTube was leading me into all these law of attraction themed coaches. And that was really started my intro to spirituality. March 2020, I listened to the book, The Law of Attraction. And that's when I would say I had my spiritual awakening. And ever since then, it's been constantly growing on lots of facets. But, especially hearing that, studying adult attachment style from the book Attached, and seeing the anxious attachment, that's another big step in the journey to like, okay, how do I want to navigate this to, try to go more towards a secure attachment, which I have been, but also embracing the shadows of one that has, desires that secure communication that the anxious attachment desires.
Can you explain that a little bit more, those attachment styles?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's 4 styles. There's really one is super rare. It's an anxious and avoidant attachment. So I won't spend a lot of time on that. But so there's secure attachment, which in theory 50% of the population is. There is anxious attachment, which I have associated myself with, at least in the past, which is 20%. And then there's avoidant, which is 25% of the population. So somebody, to put the typical labels that most people will associate with is, the anxious attachment tends to be that person that is labeled as clingy or texts a lot or needs that communication. The avoidant is the polar opposite. And they're the ones that a lot of times when they're dating somebody, they're feeling like, oh, this person's like taking my freedom away. They're like really smothering me, and it's just too much. And they'll be the ones that often ghost and push people away. And then there's the secure attachment, which is, somebody that typically is able to meet the needs of, other secure attachments, or the anxious attachment. Like, yeah, I don't mind communicating a little extra with you. And same for the avoidant, don't mind giving you space. Now, of course, the crazy dynamic that happens, and I think this is just from a unconscious wounding thing, is the anxious and the avoidant actually attract each other, even though they're the least, compatible, but they're really, like circling their like trying to think of the word, but like what they believe they deserve. Like, oh, as the anxious attachment, kind of the very subconscious belief is like, oh, well, this person's just going to leave me. I'm going to do something wrong, and they're going to not love me anymore. They're going to run away. That feeling of abandonment, and that's usually what the avoidant does. Like the anxious needs a little more than what the avoidant wants to give. The avoidant's like, whoa, okay, back off, stiff arm, and then does their behavior. I think they call it like protest behavior potentially, but they're like behavior that maybe isn't very communicative, and then it fulfills the destiny that the anxious feels, and then the avoidant feels like, yeah, see, people just want to like take my freedom and control me and all that stuff. And so it's just such a weird dynamic.
Yes, the way that I understand it is that our nervous system acclimates to a certain way of being in the world. And then once our nervous system finds that familiarity, it feels like a safe space. So it's like if we are even if it's not good for us, it's like if we find that attachment style with our mother, for instance, of we are the anxious and she is the avoidant. If that's something that we've grown up with, or any variety of situations, then as an adult, that's a familiar place for our nervous system, even though it's not necessarily good for us, but there's a level of comfort there that we can't even identify as outside of our nervous system until, which I think brings me to the question I wanted to ask you, or just kind of something that I wanted to bring up around what you're saying, is like a big part of this is really just identifying where, like putting even like, I think labels have a bad rep, but it does help us on our healing journey to be able to identify the different things that we're experiencing, and really putting like terms to those things can really help us on our journey. And I mean, shamanic work, we're all familiar with shamanic work, but I don't necessarily know if like the general population really knows what that means. So maybe, well, what called you to shamanic work, first of all?
Yeah, I wanted to ask because I feel like there's a level of permissioning that you have to give yourself to start heading down that path of learning, of taking a class, investing in yourself. And I'm curious what the nudge was.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So the specific shamanic retreat that I went to is called ISTA, or International School of Temple Arts. It's an organization that's been around for a while, and I just happened to be 2 straight days. Somebody mentioned something about sacred sexuality, and I never heard that term. And but 2 days in a row, somebody mentioned it. I'm like, that's crazy. And then the second person mentioned this ISTA retreat that she was going to go to in Austin, and I looked at it. I'm like, oh my God, that looks so cool. So I'll be very vulnerable. Of course, the thing that piqued my interest was it's called a sexual shamanic healing retreat. And of course, like, as a guy, I'm like, well, that sounds great. There's might be sex there, and I'm not getting very much sex, so of course I'm gonna be drawn to that. But it's very it's so much more than that. And there's only so much I can share as far as the ceremonies that are done there, just out of protecting the power of those ceremonies and all that. But so that's what drew me to it. And then when I get there, we learned so many really powerful things, like emotional release, which I'd mentioned before I didn't even know how to do. And that's been a practice that's healed a lot of that wounding, and helped my nervous system calm down and maybe regulate to a new, more aligned like way of living. What's that?
I said, tell me more about that.
Emotional release. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing was the wheel of consent too, which is a really powerful tool. And that's helped me express my desires with women. But yeah, as far as the question of the emotional release, yeah, that's something that, I can share. And that's, they teach a lot of really powerful techniques, which I've actually thought about trying to organize and teach even myself. Because just teaching you how to like feel your emotions and how important that is. And so like one of the simple ones is like screaming into a pillow, or screaming in your hands, like like that. And this goes by the shamanic principle of breath, sound, and movement are what we need to move energy in our body. And so this is based off of a pretty supported theory that energy or emotion is energy in motion in our body. And when we don't process those emotions, they get stuck in our body. When they get stuck in their body, they could cause physical illnesses. They can drain us and all that. So doing emotional release, like, safely screaming in your hand, pounding on a pillow. There's several other ways of doing that. That was like one of the most powerful things for me of doing that. And there were some other ceremonies where, just releasing more emotions, and I was able to start releasing a lot of that grief from childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What a beautiful space to even like connect with the things that we don't know are there.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know I needed to learn emotional release until I learned it and experienced it and did it. And now since then, I've become more grounded. There's a lot less anxiousness in my voice. I probably talk about 50%. I mean, I still talk kind of quick, but I talk about 50% of the speed that I would talked before. And I just, in Costa Rica, where I was just a couple of weeks ago, there's a men's retreat that was kind of an offshoot of Vista that from that shamanic retreat that I went to, where there was more emotional release, and so even more grounding and more centered in that space. But that shamanic retreat, it was such I like to say it was about the same power as 7 years of 8 years of therapy that I had, and about a year's worth of coaching all in 1 week. Very, very intense, of course, but very like the feeling of light, more lightness and more awareness is really good. And I feel so passionate about it. I'm actually going to plan one of those retreats, or help organize one of those retreats later this year in Minneapolis. So I just got the green light on that yesterday. I'm super excited because I really want to bring it to Minnesota where I live. And I mean, some of these things are things we should be learning in elementary school, like emotional release and how to honor people's consent and ask for consents with anything, whether it's sexual or just asking for a favor from a friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had those were thoughts that were coming through my mind as you were talking. I was like, that's what I tell my 2.5-year-old to do when he just has like a lot of pent up emotion and feelings. I say, just go with your little hammer and hit that pillow as hard as you can and as fast as you can and yell and get it out. And he'll do it. And you can just see he just like is a lighter, calmer little human. And my partner, the first time he saw it was like, I was like, just wait. And it's such a powerful practice, and we should learn it way, way, way younger.
When you were
Well, great job to you for teaching that. That's amazing.
Thank you. It's only through experience of doing it that I know that it's a powerful tool. And sometimes I think we feel foolish doing those kinds of things, like I'll stand in my living room and just shake my whole body like a crazy person. And as a yoga teacher, I often encourage people to do that in the yoga classes that I teach. And it always amazes me. There are at least 1 or 2 people that won't really do it, because it's intimidating and it's embarrassing. It's a letting go. But it's like, it also helps us get so much more connected with our true selves when we allow ourselves to just be free in that sense of just like foolish movement and wiggling and jiggling and letting all the thick parts of our body jiggle and like just being real and present with with whatever is right there at that moment. It's beautiful. I'm so glad you found this work. It's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, have you heard Glennon Doyle talks about how she has a very high pitched voice, and that what she has learned is it's like the resonance of anxiety. It's an anxious voice. She has anxiety, holds anxiety in her body, and that she learned that those that are more in their bodies, more, less anxious, more relaxed, more present, have a lower vibration voice. And you spoke to how your voice has slowed down too. And I love that.
Totally.
Well, I'm glad you say that.
Like, I'm slowing down. I'm becoming more present.
Well, and I love that you said that because I just got a reflection from a brother even post so the shamanic retreat was back in summer. That helped a lot, but there was still some anxiety in there, or at least, getting further away from the retreat, maybe some of the anxiety coming back and the impatience that I often have. Then I went to the retreat, the Costa Rica retreat, just a couple weeks ago, and I reconnected with a brother, and he said that exact same thing about my voice. Is, before it's like kind of a higher pitch, a little bit of vibrating voice, whereas now he's like, I can hear that it's more grounded, a deeper voice, and so exactly what you said. So I just even further proof to that point. Uh, just like another indicator of anxiety.
So cool.
Well, and in our like chakras, it's like the root is where we like find our lowest tones, and the throat is often where we find like our highest pitch. And so I always think of that as like becoming more rooted and connected to our sacral, or our like
Our truth.
our sacred root, our truth, and our sexuality. And like this is where, that's where, I teach this a lot in prenatal yoga. It's like, if we take a breath together on the exhale, and when we exhale, we make a high pitched sound, our pelvis and our body will contract and engage. And if we exhale with a low pitched sound, our body will soften and the muscles of our body will actually relax and release without us having to do anything other than change the pitch of our voice. It's incredible. It's really powerful. And so my brain, I see like that depth in the voice and that connection really just like coming from up here to like dropping in and really centering into our truth and your truth. And yeah, it's really beautiful. I'm curious about, like you spoke to being obese in grade school. And one thing that I heard, and this maybe is something that you're fully aware of, or maybe is a reflection or something, but is that after you were able to lose, or after you found a path to losing 130 pounds, is that what you said, 130 pounds?
Yep.
Then you started dating and trying to find that love. And part of me thinks, like maybe in that journey, once you met your goal and you found this place of like contentment within yourself physically, then there was that love for yourself, maybe even subconsciously, that you didn't even know was like shifting, that like offered that confidence to start dating in the way that you had. And even like, I think weight or not aside, like this can happen for people in all sorts of capacities, but for you, it was a weight loss journey. And one, I'd love to hear more about this weight loss journey, but I'm also curious what comes up for you around maybe that transition from being more turned in and maybe not as bold in trying to find people to date, like turning to the online world of dating, and like how that journey, how you maybe looking back, like what does that feel like, and what could you share with people also in terms of like weight loss? And I know you came up with like a whole protocol almost for yourself, and it was quite the journey. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, thank you. So as far as the transition to maybe, finding that confidence towards dating or being more proactive with it was a lot of just feeling so sick of being rejected, through, or what again was perceiving as rejection, which I think was more just my anxiety and that neediness that women were really feeling. And that's why they weren't interested, or just not interested at all. But again, the perception throughout school in the early 20s was that, it's how I looked. And so I really just kind of got to the point in college that I didn't try that much, because I'm like, I know what the result's going to be, right? It's so sad to continue to put yourself out there and continue to receive no's. And there was every once in a while, there was somebody I was really drawn to that I would, try to talk to, and, very awkwardly, very nervously, then it wouldn't go very well. So it was just kind of like negative reinforcement. So I was just graduating college, and that was a perfect transition time to start changing my habits. And, that's around, 21, 22 when I started to lose the weight. So I think, to answer your first part of the question, really what it felt like was, it was more of an intellectual thing more than even self-love, because I didn't even still have concept of that for another 10 years afterwards. But it was more of an intellectual thing of, okay, now I'm not overweight. Maybe women will think I'm more attractive. Maybe they'll give me love, the very core sense. And then there being websites available to try that out with, relatively lower risk, then, that feels lower risk to message somebody and try to get to know them through email than asking them out in person. That big fear, big trauma for me there. So so that's kind of the transition thing. I think it was more intellectual, just based off of how I looked, and then going through, the process of dating. But as far as the weight loss journey itself, I actually lost 20 pounds by accident to start, and that's really what inspired things. And so my very last semester of college, maybe even both semester, I think it was just my last semester, I lost 20 pounds without trying. And Eleanor might appreciate this, thanks to World of Warcraft, because I was a huge gaming nerd and I was being less social my senior year. I was just, trying to get through college. I was going to less parties. So I was eating less pizza, much less binge drinking. And all of a sudden I just weighed myself like after college, and I'm like, oh, I lost 20 pounds. I wasn't trying. I've struggled with this my whole life. What the heck, And so I did a little bit of internet research and found like a workout program that I really enjoyed. And I basically, my system, and this is what I have for my weight loss class too, that I offer, is just slow habit change. And the way I lost my weight was, okay, well, there's something that does work. I'm going to experiment. And I wasn't putting shame on myself. I wasn't putting a lot of pressure. I'm like, okay, I'm moving out of college into, renting a house with some friends. I'm going to just try, adding a new habit every month. Like, okay, instead of eating ice cream every day, I'm going to eat it 3 days a week. And then eventually, like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to have ice cream on special occasions. And maybe I'm not going to buy chocolate milk anymore, or maybe I'll drink it less. And just some of the very obvious things we know that, like, okay, I probably have too much of that, just backing it off. And then really just doing that over the course of 3 or 4 weeks and doing it so slow that you're like, I can't wait to do the next thing. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing enough. Like, that's important, because a lot of people struggle is they're impatient, understandably so. It's not a fun journey to be overweight, but they get so impatient. It's like, well, I need to do all this at once and hurry up and lose the weight. And sometimes that works for the short term, but you've added so much in your life that it's so stressful for you, and then it becomes more work. And when you create more work for yourself, you create more stress. Create more stress for yourself, you actually probably generate more fat for yourself, and your root chakra, your body, your nervous system isn't feeling as safe, so you're going to have less positive results, or you may even have negative results because you're so stressed. So it's a lot about first finding the self-love, and which is kind of what I learn about or teach in my course, and reducing the shame, but then also helping people build whatever system they need. It doesn't need to be the same system as me, but helping them build whatever system they're bought into that feels intuitive to their body, that they can slowly change their habits, and then they will lose weight over time.
So much about self-worth. And I really love what you said. It's like you said, you added something every month. So many people are like, what can I take away from my life to go on this journey? And it's like, you added something. You were like seeing this as an addition and a benefit to your life, and not like not a deprivation, and not a I think that is so important and such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and that 20 pounds probably wasn't accidental. It was just that you'd already started on that journey a little bit, so that you weren't binge drinking and eating as much. It was a choice, and it worked.
Yeah, I remember it was like the summer, or no, it was around December 2005 that I weighed in. I was 293 pounds, and I'm 5'7.5". So not super tall, and had a little bit of muscle, but not that much muscle, not 130 pounds of muscle, certainly not. So I remember hearing that, and I think he actually gave me vitamins. He gave me Centrum vitamins, the doctor, when I checked in, and I was like, okay. And I think that actually helped a little bit too, because my body was malnourished, because it was basically eating pizza and beer several days a week and other not so nutritious things. So that, combined with, I think, staying home a little bit more and not binge drinking as much, and not going as crazy into pizza, just was such an easy thing. And that's where I call it by accident, because it wasn't like I didn't think it was a major intention, but I think when it happened, it realized, like, oh, okay, this could be easier. And that was kind of where I thought about, yeah, maybe I did that through slow habit change, and it can be easier to do as long as you're patient and you're not putting a lot of pressure on it. And even that, again, at that point, I didn't even have the self-love piece. It was much the last couple of years when I was researching to build my course that I've added the self-love piece to be first, right? Even before the metrics of how much you eat, which I don't make people track calories. Like I would have done that before, but then as I've learned a lot from various other health practitioners, especially in the spiritual space the last couple of years, I recognize that having a base of self-love can help so much with, reducing needing to use food for emotional comfort and anxiety and bored eating, and just so many other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of wisdom you've
Thank
gained.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Thank you. I worked really hard for it. It was really
Yeah,
painful
you
to get, but I'm glad I can share it.
You earned it. And
Yes, I did.
I love how you shared at the beginning the value, what you've been experiencing, the reward of doing all this work.
Yeah, thank you. It's something, one of my themes in my life is the sense of responsibility and a sense of, I think, a service to the world. And, I definitely know that as I heal myself, I'm showing up better for other people. But I just know for me, for one, I'm feeling better, but two, then I can help my clients, my coaching clients, my, consulting clients, anybody that around me, that I can serve them better. And there was a really great saying that I'm sure this is a common saying, but one of my shamanic facilitators said this was our trauma is not our fault, but our healing is our responsibility. I love that.
I love that. Yes.
And I own that. And I see that when I take that on, then I live better, and then I can help others live better, which is ultimately what fuels me from the age of 4, of seeing people around me. I've seen people settle, like especially like my mom in some situations, and my family members, just seeing them settle. That was a motivation of like, I don't want to be that person that settles in anything, in relationships and life and health, whatever. And so that's my why of why I'm the like, let's go, let's make some change happen. Let's do this, and be that catalyst for people to change.
Yes. It's going to work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you've been my friend for quite a while now, and I've just been fortunate enough to be along with you on some of your journey, to have been able to witness your change and your growth and all the beautiful things that have been happening. And so I really wanted to come to the part that I know the least about right now at this point, which is your kind of most recent growth, these retreats that you've been going to. And earlier you said that you were feeling very centered, and that is very important for men to feel centered. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to what that means to you, like how it feels to be centered, and then also why that is so important.
Yeah, thank you. What a great question. I don't think I've answered this before. So beautiful. We'll see what Spirit wants me to say here. So why it's important to me is I know it feels a lot better to feel centered and feel grounded, especially in those situations where I would get anxious, like, oh, you should go talk to this girl at this party that you don't know, and just strike up a conversation. Just being centered feels immensely better just for me, but it's also valuable to, again, this is just based off a lot of my learnings the last couple months, and in the traditional relationship, that's really all I can kind of speak to. But, in the sense of a man-woman type of connection, where the man's the core masculine and the woman, core feminine. Of course, we both have masculine and feminine energies within all of us, but how I've learned it, that it's important, and I've seen this finally as I've been practicing it myself, is it really puts the woman at ease as well. A woman that wants to receive a man, a woman that's in her emotions, that's in her flow. she's going to feel a lot more comfortable to be in her emotions and not be on guard if a woman or if a man is centered and grounded. And I can vouch to the other side of that, where I've been, anxious and, not grounded, not centered. And there's, her side, I suspect she would feel that unconscious neediness for me, that needing something from her. And she's like, whoa, I didn't agree to this, as far like just needing like validation, just in that, just energetically meaning neediness. And so like, oh, this guy, I can feel his anxiety, it's like, oh, I gotta protect myself. Right. And, at least in what I've studied with regard to the masculine energy, the masculine's about holding space, protecting, listening, non-judgmentally. And she's having to like be in her masculine energy of like, oh, well, hold on, I got to protect myself here. I don't think I trust this guy. I'm got to push him away or whatever. And that's what's happened so much. So the high level of it is it feels so much better to be centered and grounded. And I think we're also in the situation where our whole world, and especially the work world, has gotten everybody really heavy in their masculine. And one of this other course that I just completed around masculine and feminine energies as well, states that women are kind of having to be in their masculine energy a lot more, which many do not want to be in as much, whether that's from work or especially with men. And maybe one of the root causes of that, I think there's going to be many of them, but many of it is, maybe the Me Too movement, maybe other things like from the 90s. Like the thing that always comes to my head is like, women that just are berating men, like, oh, men are pigs, men, all they want is sex, all they blah, 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 all these things. And there's probably some validity to that too. But I think there's a generalization, like with anything, there's a generalization with that. And so I grew up, in the 80s and 90s, and especially my challenges with a woman or with my mom, showed up as being the nice guy, where I'm like, oh, you're supposed to be nice to women. And in essence, of course, it's good to be polite, but there's some inauthenticity with that, right? And women can feel that as well. So that was another thing that was pushing women away. So where it seems like it's better to be as a man is to be authentic, grounded, open, honest, not pressuring, of course, but expressing your desires in a way that she feels safe to say, empowered yes or empowered no, back, and then it's good.
Mm. Yeah.
You just said a lot, just
Yeah.
now, digesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that space too. I was like, I just keep getting stuff that I want to say that, keep going down that path. So thank you for this opportunity to say all that.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so open and vulnerable and you're sharing with us. This is really powerful.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful circle to be in. And I don't know, so much of it comes back to self-worth for me, like listening to your share right now and like how these movements and how, radical feminism, so many things that have happened in the last 50 years have brought us to this place where so many of us are out of balance with our feminine and masculine. And in that, even without being able to identify it, even if we haven't come to that realization in our journey, there's a level of self-worth that is not present when we're out of balance. And when we don't feel worthy in ourselves, like I once heard one of my mentors speak to this in terms of just getting health care. If we don't feel worthy of being healthy, then we aren't going to go to the doctor or go to a naturopath or go to the, acupuncturist when we need something. And it's not only that we don't provide for ourselves from a place of, lacking self-worth, it's also that we then project onto others and we then cannot hold a grounded space. And that's kind of where we're at in the world right now. And it's pretty intense and it's pretty, it takes, I think that's
It's
really
insecurity.
There's a lot of insecurity because we are in such a place of, imbalance. And it's also a theme in these podcast conversations that we come back to the balance of the feminine and the masculine within all of us and within the different populations and genders and identities within society. And I think this is a really massive shift and a really big thing that in 30 years they're going to be like, oh right, when everyone was balancing their masculine and their feminine, this is, you know, that's why we're here now. And I think there are a lot of benefits, and I think there's a lot of, you know, radical reactions to it. And you know, and we're in a radical time of existence right now. And that kind of brings me to a question that I have for you, which is, all of this requires patience. Your journey in weight loss required patience. The journey of healing requires patience. The journey of reconnecting with women in this new way. And for any of us, our journey in sisterhood and brotherhood, you know, it's like all of these things require patience. And I've heard you speak to patience a lot in this conversation. And I think that is a really hard thing for people sometimes. Like you said, we want the result. And I'm, you know, what is your advice for finding that patience?
Yeah. So my advice is, I'm still one of the least patient people, I believe, but so you're probably, anybody that's listening, you're probably more patient than I am. So you'll do just fine, because I still know that's one of the other things for me to learn in this lifetime is patience. But the what's in it for you, with anytime there's some sort of change, the always figuring out what's in it for you is seeing the, you know, another shamanic principle, the spiral path of you're making the, you know, the feeling the same negative thing or making the same quote unquote mistake over and over and over again. That forces you, like, okay, I'm tired of feeling abandonment. I'm tired of feeling rejection. I guess I'll be patient, because being patient, even though I'm not a super patient person, feels better than continuing to feel the same thing over and over again.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's that acceptance. And I think, you know, that spiral that you were making with your finger reminds me of the tarot and that shamanic, you know, it's like, oh right, this journey is not linear, and you contract in the tarot and the fives, it's this major contraction, and you know, you have that. And when we have that perspective of our journey as being like, oh right, it's validating. It's like, oh right, this is just part of the journey. And when you feel like you've gone backwards, looking at it as just the contraction period, you know, before you head out again, it makes it seem a little more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I always imagine that spiral, you know, when you're journeying on the spiral, you might come and important. When you're journeying on that spiral, you might come back to the like edge of something you've experienced before, but you don't have to be fully in it, because now you're in a different place on the spiral. And slowly, you know, I mean, almost inevitably, we work our way away from the edge of the spiral in our life. And it's up to us, like, what we carry on that spiral. But I always like to imagine that every revolution, we're getting a little bit closer and closer to our center, or to that like universal truth.
Yes.
I love the spiral.
Yes, right, exactly. And isn't that kind of the concept of the Zen circle? Is it that expanded out, like the Zen circle is really only the 2D version of the 3D spiral that is going on. But that every revolution you make, you're intended to meet this similar experience again, so that you can let something go every single time.
And clearer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's a beautiful description, because that's the way I learned it too at that ISTA retreat, the shamanic retreat too, is we're going to be in the spiral. If we do the same thing, we're going to get the same results. And so as you see the pattern of like, oh, well, every time I, you know, show up this way with women, they say no, or they're not interested, you know, or not interested in going on a date or whatever. So that's like, okay, maybe I'm going to try something different. Okay, let's try, you know, taking a deep breath before you go into it, or try, you know, maybe not feeling anxious or not being so attached to the outcome, or, you know, all these little things. And then you're like, oh, I got a little bit different result. You know, at least I got her number this time, or we went on a date, or, you know, she said no, but it didn't feel like it was total rejection, or, you know, those types of things. And that's the way one of the methods that was taught at ISTA too, is this thing called like shadow tracking. Like you're, you know, this is part of the shadow, this wound of feeling rejected by women and abandonment. So it's seeing the shadow, loving it, not like pushing it away, like, oh, there's something wrong with you, you're this and you said it perfectly, the label of anxious attachment, like loving it, right? Not making it a curse, but saying, okay, I see this. I know this is a part of me. How do I really want to show up? Knowing that the way I showed up this way hasn't served me very well, or maybe even the other person, even if I show up this way, is that can be good. And if you get that positive reinforcement, it feels good in your body. And then it's like, oh, okay. So then, like you said, you're changing that spiral's trajectory. Instead of being the same spiral, it's like a further along one, right? Or a smaller spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, I'm working on using my voice more, hence this podcast
Mm.
in my life.
Cool.
And I used it quite a bit at a meeting the other night, and I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Hey,
Yeah. That's
brava.
yeah.
Oh.
Ryan, I'd really like to ask you about your relationship to men and how that has evolved in this journey and how it supports you now, as opposed to what it was like in college, for instance, or even, throughout that journey, and how important that's been, or maybe not, but how is that showing up in your life?
Yeah, beautiful question. Yeah, my relationship with men has been fine. I mean, I think it's been, I can't help but like share it in contrast with women, right? So if there's a situation where, there's a guy, even if it's a guy I don't know or a friend or whatever, I'm a lot more likely to voice boundaries or voice like no, I don't want to do that, or speak up, right? But if it's like the case of a woman where it's like, again, this goes to the self-worth piece you're saying, is like, oh, well, I have to, be agreeable to her or she won't like me, or if I don't do this, she'll think I'm a bad person or whatever type of thing. So not holding to my own self-love and self-boundaries. So I've always felt pretty good with having boundaries with men. I mean, I was very fortunate. I do have a great father. The one, I think, dynamic as far as me as being a man that maybe I've had some challenge with is, this, I don't know, this ideal of what a good man is, hearing this concept of alpha male, right? And then I also fell into this trap of reading a book about how to attract women from the alpha male, which was really very the manipulative behavior. So then I like having to read this book and erase all that stuff too, now that I'm much more conscious of how to go about in the world. But this feeling of like, oh, I'm not, a super tall guy, and not having, I mean, my voice is getting a little bit deeper again, with reducing the anxiety, but, not having like the super deep voice, or not, what the body of, again, going to a lot of the physical things. I think in that sense, I've had insecurities in the past, and just what, like, again, kind of this assumption or my interpretation that, that I wasn't, good looking, but I see these women fall for these guys. I'm like, this guy's a total jerk. Like, you can't see this guy's a jerk, but he's, tall and good looking and dark and handsome and all that. So again, feeling a little bit of insecurity of seeing this woman that I'm attracted to be attracted to that guy, but not me, even though I feel very confident in what I bring in a relationship and into really any connection, through intelligence and sensitivity and listening and being caring and, being a good cook, being financially responsible, all these great qualities, a lot of them that I've learned from my dad as well. But so my relationship with men, I think, has been pretty good. It's not something that I've really thought to spend a lot of time with, but I did just come back from a men's retreat, and I think it was enhanced even more of just realizing how much, like, we can have true brotherly love where you can like hug a brother, right? And maybe even hold a brother, right? And it not be going into the whatever, being, anti-gay or being gay or all those stigmas that come around with, being a guy. It's like, oh, you can't, you got to high five a guy or whatever. Otherwise, all that whatever stuff that does blanket judgments from, like the 90s and 80s and beyond generations.
Collective homophobia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. There you go. That was the word I was trying to think of.
Yeah. Totally.
And it's actually even more important as I'm mourning again with the dynamic of men and women is one of the things that I learned at the retreat and from various other sources is it's really important for us men to talk to our brothers, right? Again, this is good for the polarity, the sexual polarity between a man and a woman, as well as, you know, certainly a woman can hold space, but in the core feminine, she doesn't want to constantly hold space and be your therapist, be your coach, be your support.
Yeah, and
And
like see everybody in the room just like,
Oh,
thank you.
we're sorry, but this is also to one of the things I wanted to say earlier. And to any men that listen to the podcast, we need to go first. So men, it's all more important that we need to find our self-love and we need to do that emotional release because one, we, you know, as men, we do have a little bit more advantage in the world, especially white man. We have more power. We do need to go first with being vulnerable, feeling our emotions, processing our traumas so that we're not projecting it on to women and that we're showing up more grounded. And then the women are going to feel safer and they're going to be, you know, where they need to be and feeling better. And we're going to have a much better dynamic, I suspect, with men and women and just in our world, like everybody's gonna be happier. Right. So just to be, you know, very out there, men, of course, yes, we're very physical, you know, just put in terms of sex, just to motivate the men that are listening to this. Cause you know, there's always that. Men, if you want to get what you want with a woman, deal with your emotions, take care of yourself, love yourself, come from a place of being grounded and securing. And then the woman's going to feel safe. And then you guys will both get what you want and you'll be much happier. And like in 20, 30 years, we will all be much happier.
Oh,
the end.
Boom.
yeah, mic drop. And I think you could probably collectively feel that we want to tackle you with so much love right now for putting out that call.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you.
will all live happily ever after.
Yes, thank you so much for that call, that invitation to men everywhere.
Thank you. And thank you for receiving that because that's important. Because now that I'm practicing that, I'm much more well received from the feminine. And that's something I just could not figure out. So especially if any men are listening and they're not feeling well received by the feminine, that's time to kind of look inward. Don't project it out on, you know, their fault. It's your emotions, which you need to deal with. You work with a coach, work with a therapist, go to shamanic retreats, whatever you need to do to feel those emotions, take care of yourself and be fully self-sufficient and not rely on, you know, your partner or a woman to help you heal your wounds, right? There could be, you know, obviously the shared path there, everybody's working on their own thing and maybe there's some support here and there, but for the most part, you need to own your own healing.
Mhm.
Here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, we started talking earlier before we started about you growing out your hair. And so you're going to grow out your hair. You've got this like fine beard coming in now. And so, you know, we were projecting about in a year, like where your hair is going to be and all of that. But where do you see yourself going? Where are you headed?
How far with the hair? How far?
No, I'm talking about
It's
everywhere.
about you now.
I'm talking about like with all
Oh,
the things. You are an amazing coach. You have all these skills. You're, you know, trained in human design and you've just been, you know, through all of this growth. Where are you going with all of this?
Wow, what a beautiful question. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I've learned, I've used to be very much a person of like, you know, have the 6-month goal, 12-month goal, and those are valuable too. But I'm very much in I think I'm pretty close to a balance by my masculine and feminine of surrendering into what's happening. Right now, I'm in a really great space of after leaving the corporate world that I was in for 18 years last April. I'm really starting to feel good in alignment of creating my financial abundance through my business. And so doing that with coaching, I'm doing that with human design readings today. I'm getting more into doing the process and sculpting that I love. So it's like healing processes instead of healing people, which I know sounds super super dorky, but processes needing healing in terms of like working better for the business owner, which I help people do. Planning retreats, like I'm planning that ISTA retreat. That's going to be just an awesome opportunity. Planning a human design manifestor retreat. So yeah, we're looking to plan some more retreats, have some more offerings for coaches or for coaching, and then more offerings to help business owners get in alignment with their business and feel good in their business. So yeah, maybe a billionaire,
Yeah, that's it.
maybe, I don't know, maybe trillions. Why not? I'll
Yes.
manifest it.
Correct. Yes, cheers to that.
I will have you back on to teach us about human design.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. I'll stop there because I know we're already at time. But yeah, human design, super passionate about it. Found it 2 years ago. Love it. So life changing to get in alignment with your energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is that a good tease for the next episode?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We're definitely gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So
Very refreshing.
yeah. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. Oh, that feels so nourishing.
As always connecting with you, my dear friend. Yes. Oh yes, I know. I wish you were here eating this food with us.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah,
I really wish I was there right now too. Like that, just to be in your guys' space, be in that yummy food. Just again, not something I'm not used to as a man, being well received by women. And so again, this is how you get there. Thank you for your love and receiving me the way I am. And it's so calming for my nervous system as well.
It feels a little redundant to ask this, but I'm going to do it anyway because this is how we typically close a conversation. But what are you celebrating right now?
Celebrating feeling more and more alignment than I was even a couple months ago, where I thought I was in great alignment, right? So more alignment, more groundedness, less stress and less anxiety.
We're celebrating for you and with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mwah. Mwah.
Ah.